And to today's webinar, Eco-Minded Entrepreneurship. My name is Madeline Wolski. I'm the business librarian here at Champaign Public Library. And before I introduce our speaker today, I'm going to mention some overall library housekeeping that will be reiterated at the end of the program. So the library is now open. Our hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. as well, and Sunday from noon to 6 p.m. And you are more than welcome to come into the library. We just ask that you wear a mask over your mouth and nose at all times. We're also still continuing our curbside services if you don't feel comfortable coming in. If you have any questions about the library, you are free to email us at librarian at champaign.org. You can always chat us live during our open hours. And if you want a more in-depth help session, for example, if you want to learn how to use our databases for market research for business, or if you want to learn more about using Google, email, so Gmail, you can always book a librarian with us on our website. So that's champaign.org/book a librarian. So a little info about Zoom. I think we're all pretty much used to it by now, but just as a reminder, if you have any questions during the webinar or have any technical troubleshooting that needs to happen, just type a question or statement in the chat box. So I just sent one in, and I just want to make sure that you know who you're sending the chat to. So you have two options or several options, but here's the two I'd recommend. So you can either send your question or comment to all panelists and attendees, and everyone in the webinar will be able to see it, or you can just send it to all panelists, and it will be essentially, your question or comment will be hidden from all other attendees. So we are recording today's webinar, and it will be available on our YouTube channel. And great, I think that's all I have to go over as far as housekeeping. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mona Fang. She's the CEO of Karma Trade, and that's a zero waste swap service that aims to disrupt the negative effects of fast fashion. She's also a yoga instructor and an aerospace engineering student at the University of Illinois. So welcome, Mona. Thank you for joining us today, and I will let you go ahead and take over the screen.
Thanks for the introduction, Madeline.
Of course.
Let me get set up over here. Hope everyone is doing all right tonight. And we can see the screen. We're all
Looks
good.
Great.
Awesome. Well, Madeline did start talking a little bit about me. Well, I am Mona Fang. I run the company called Karma Trade. We're a UIUC-based startup, and we're currently in the small business phase. I do study aerospace engineering at the U of I, and I teach yoga in the local community, going from vinyasa to yin yoga. You'll find me as a person who wishes to help people solve, or humanity solve its greatest problems: technology, mental health, environmental sustainability. So to talk a little bit about where we started and where we are now. I started this company when I was in high school. Originally, I was selling a ton of clothes online, from reselling on different platforms. And at the time, I was going through this realization transition period where it became very obvious to me that the fast fashion industry had a lot of inefficiencies. And so it's being talked about a lot today. A couple years back, not as much. So I was sitting in a coffee shop with my friend, and we were just, complaining about how difficult it was to recirculate our own secondhand clothes, and how our own closets were just so overrun with clothes that we didn't want to wear, and it was waste that I asked her, what if we could collectively put in all the clothes that we don't wear, and then we can pull out what we want to wear. So in a systematic approach to be able to fix the problems of textile waste within the fashion industry. Now, this was when I was 16, 17 years old. So this was when I started realizing, I could make a difference in the world by by recirculating fashion a little bit more, we've been, for far too long, we've been in this linear consume then dispose model where we produce 80 billion clothing items every year and generate 250 million tons of textile waste. Now, in that perspective, my mission is to recirculate that 250 million tons of textile waste into reusable product so that we don't have to actually produce 80 billion clothing items. So collectively, as a society, we put in a lot of resources into fashion, and I believe that we don't need to if we were able to recirculate items more. So we started very minimally, but the beauty of Karma Trade is that people were always willing to give us clothes because it is a very big problem to have a ton of stuff in your closet and then not have any value out of it. So we were able, in the first year or so running this in high school, we collected a ton of clothes, maintained an inventory of 500 clothing items pretty much, and started running events in the local area. We actually ran under a different name. It's called Style 360. There's a little bit of marketing content that's still out there from that era. Definitely interesting. So it was slightly different of a product, but what I learned during those 2 years of running a startup was to pivot MVPs very frequently and then learn and execute on certain ideas and communicate those ideas towards a team. So in the end of high school, I actually pitched at a pitch competition talking about the same idea, same problem, same traction. We had a survey of 450 people who responded that 90% of them have at least 10 items in their wardrobe that they don't wear. So the problem that we're tackling for the people are that there is a lot of clothing waste in the system, in their closets. So we pitched, and then we were able to get our first $3,000 in grant funding that helped us start operations when I came into college. So now transitioning into college, we moved clothes from a storage unit into the basement of CoLab, which is in downtown Urbana. So in there, we were able to store our first initial inventory of clothes, and again, running events by telling people, hey, bring your clothes out. And this time we pivoted a little bit, and now we started introducing karma points, and we said, hey, bring your clothes out, and then we'll give you equal value points for clothes, and you can use those points for other clothes. So we started, playing around with that idea, seeing how people responded, seeing what the problems were and what the solutions could be. So that happened for about a year and a half. When we entered into the iVenture Accelerator, we pitched in around the community, and we were able to secure a lot more grants so that we were able to open our storefront. And now we have a physical retail location inside of Urbana downtown where you can bring in your clothes and swap. So I'll talk about what Karma Trade is. We are a shared closet. We have over 4,000 clothing items that we have taken in. And in display, we have 1,000 items currently. We operate off of a system called Karma Points, where when you give us your clothes, we'll give you equal value store credit based off of resale value. And that's what Karma Points is. So you can use Karma Points to get other clothes in store, and all you pay in money is $2 per clothing item as a flat transaction service fee. What that means is that you can have a very flexible, minimal closet. You can bring in the items that you were holding on to for a long time because maybe one reason could be that you couldn't find a way to resell it. Another one is that you might not be able to let go of it because it has a lot of sentimental value. And another one is that you're waiting for an opportunity to resell or donate, but haven't gotten around to it. What we do is that we're very transparent with our what we do with people's clothes, so that people feel very good about bringing their clothing in. Hence, Karma Trade. So I'll pause here if there are any questions so far.
Hi, Mona. So I do have some questions about when you first founded Style 360, I guess. So who were your first customers?
Yeah, so Style 360 was a stylist swap service. That's why it was called Style 360. So
Okay.
we would tell people to fill out a style profile, basically a questionnaire, and then we would choose clothes for them based off of what they send us and what their preferences are.
And were those clothes
So,
donated from others, or so it was that still sustainable model?
yes, so we started with an initial inventory of 500 items, and then we started marketing this service so that people could essentially swap with our 500 clothing items. Uh, our first customers were friends of mine,
Mhm.
and why I knew this product wouldn't work was I went through a period of having 20 free customer trials, and it took a lot of work to convince them to do it for free.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized this isn't going to work. And through our marketing efforts throughout like an entire month, we were able to get 2 or 3 sales, but the customer satisfaction wasn't there, and there was a lot of questions, and people weren't interested in the items that we sent them. Um, so
Hmm.
it was good learning, though.
Absolutely. I mean, that's starting a new business. There's a lot of iterations before you go through that tried and true valuable outcome. So with your first customers, so they were just your friends, when did you first make the transition to customers where your marketing kind of reached someone that you didn't know?
Yeah, I think that was right before the pandemic happened. But we've always had a lot of information out there about us.
Hmm.
So we've always had great community awareness that we were trying to do something that was zero waste fashion related and swap based on the concept of swaps. So it was great to have that community. But when we started pitching the idea that you can get something equal value back for your clothes and that you could choose whatever you want instead of us being a stylist and picking stuff out for you, but that you can just enter a shared closet with a with a concept called karma points. That was when it really helped. So our first people, we were hosting events in the Gilbert
Yeah.
Gallery in downtown Urbana.
Hmm.
This was our first one in 2020 January. We had over 100 people come in.
That's awesome.
Um, it was a great success, and initially how we got the marketing going was by just messaging Facebook resellers, people who were selling clothes in the local community, because we knew their problem was that it's it's very difficult to resell your clothes.
Right. Um, okay, cool. So you just found essentially these small sellers and created that perfect venue for them to also get financial gain, or
It it works both in financially, but also for their own stylistic purposes. Because if you have inventory or just clothes that you don't want, that doesn't have any value to you. But if you offload that to us, and then you can find something else that
right?
works well for you or your friends.
Well, cool. And then I have one more question from someone. So how did you get the 400 or 500 people to fill out your first survey? Was there like incentive or how did that happen?
Yeah, you throw the student card. Hey, I'm a student and I'm doing this, from a business, and you throw it into these community chats. So ours was at the time I was in the Chicago suburbs, so we threw it into like this moms network, and then we threw it into like different Facebook groups. A lot of people responded. We didn't actually have to spend any money, which was great.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, so essentially finding like-minded people through social media.
Yes,
Very
yes.
cool. All right, well, I think those are all of the questions. So I'll let you go on ahead.
All right, sounds good. So an example of how karma trade is used, oftentimes it's tricky to visualize what you can get from the system. But this was our most recent Google Maps review, and I'm just going to read it. She says, "I love this place. I don't see myself shopping anywhere else now that I found Karma Trade. They have going out clothes, business clothes, loungewear. I brought in a few bags of stuff, expecting to maybe get a few points, but I ended up with 700, which translates to $700 of store credit. I shopped as much as I wanted with that, only paid $20 for it all, and left with 600 points to shop with. Still, go through your closet, bring in some stuff, and check out what they have." So I love this review for two reasons. She talks about how she's able to simply get whatever she wants, and she goes in with the mentality, that she has 700 points, and honestly, she's not going to spend it all in one day, but anything is up for grabs because it's only a $2 service fee. So I think what this ties in is the second point is that I think we are very sustainability focused, but it doesn't detriment the customer's experience. So we were able to develop a product and a service offering that really resonates with people while still maintaining and holding true to our values as a company. So in this case, she was able to get 10 clothing items for $2, which is much more affordable than fast fashion itself. So how do we do it? We operate off of a closed loop supply chain. And that is why we are a zero waste clothing swap service. So this is a much debated topic. Capitalism versus environmental sustainability. We are a for-profit company. Well, how do we run a for-profit company while keeping the environmental environment in mind? Well, we built a model such that the more people who use our service will actually bring a more positive environmental shift within the fashion industry. Traditional notions that there's a traditional notion that businesses must generate waste to be efficient. But I challenge that perspective that waste is only waste when there is an inefficient use of resources. So let's take that back towards the fashion industry. There's a lot of waste that happens in production. There's, for each pair of jeans, it takes 5,000 to 10,000 liters of fresh water to produce, from growing the cotton to dyeing it and polluting it, and to sewing in the human hours then to, sewing each seam and fabricating the item. And then, of course, the delivery. So there's a lot, the waste that happens is in that production process, and as well as the waste stream that happens afterwards. So 90% of donated material into popular secondhand stores actually don't sell. And what that means is that they fall under a channel called recycling. But what that actually means is that they're selling to various sub-Saharan African countries, or, I had a friend who was in Haiti and saw just clothing bales just lying on the side of irrigation systems. So they would sell these clothing bundles to these locations for, $2 a ton. But most of that ends up as trash because they won't be able to recirculate it. And now, if we were able to, so waste is an inefficient use of resources. So textile waste happens because we're inefficiently dumping it into grounds of other communities, whereas we could recirculate it. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about what we do with our clothes, or what we have done with our clothes. So this year alone, we were able to bring in over 4,000 clothing items in the front desk since we opened in July 31st, 2020. The community has responded very well, and we have been able to capture these items and make sure that they aren't ending up in waste. Now, keeping in mind, if these were donated, 90% of them would likely end up in landfills that you see as such. And I included pictures here to showcase what the production of clothing looks like. These images are often taken away from us because we don't exist in a world where textile production and factories are located. So if by swapping out 4,000 clothing items, that means that people are turning to us rather than fast fashion sources. And that means we would prevent 22 million liters of fresh water from being polluted, having less demand on the fast fashion industry. Now, why is this dye pollution such a problem? Not to go too deep into it, but major river sources are polluted with carcinogenic dyes, and these dyes are very adhesive, such that they don't wash during your typical clothing wash cycle. So they seep into local communities, flora, fauna, the water, and it's caused skyrocketing rates of cancer and infant mortality in certain regions. Yes. So this is what we like to educate people about when they're consuming fashion. Now, on a brighter note, we've also helped 314 people maintain a guilt-free Karma Trade shared closet within their own closet. So they've been able to swap their clothes. They can bring their clothes in, use their points. They can turn to us before they turn to any other fast fashion sources. Yeah, and I'll pause here for some questions.
Yeah, I'll wait to see if any come in, but can you briefly just define fast fashion, just in case people aren't really sure what that is?
Sure. Fast fashion, instead of having 4 seasons every year for fast fashion, and normal fashion, now there is 52 seasons. This was first pioneered by a brand called Zara, but now it has spread across to many different brands. And typically their model is to outsource their production by creating clothes in Bangladesh or India or Cambodia in hazardous working conditions. And they source the cheapest materials. They make things to break so that you can, consume and dispose.
How depressing. All right. Well, I don't think we have any questions about that, so I'll just let you go ahead and continue while I just softly cry over here.
Yes. Many nights that I felt the same way. So how do we create a closed loop supply chain? So I could say that on the outside, but this is what we do in our internal operations. And I think this can prove as a model for any businesses that are operating with essentially physical material or raw material, to think about, okay, what happens after I give this product to a customer? Where is it going to go? And, if it comes back to me, that's actually a plus for the business, because then I can reuse that material, which took a lot of resources to create. So in this case, fashion is a very long-term product. And, we can always think about, oh, my mom or, my grandma gave me a dress from 30, 40 years ago, and I could still wear it today. So looking at this, that means that we're able to recirculate clothes in a very circular manner. So when people swap in their clothes, that amount of clothing ends up in our shared closet. And then maybe someone else finds it and wears it. That happens pretty much about 70% of the time. However, there are items that we know, even thinking back at our own closet, that, oh, this is slightly stained. This is kind of outdated, kind of ugly. This is kind of damaged or really worn out. So there are items that are going to not find a home through the shared closet. And we accounted for this. So instead of throwing this all towards a local donation store where it could most likely end up in landfill, we actually add it into our process so that we can make efficient use of resources and generate zero waste. So we bring these clothing items into our leftover inventory stash. These items are damaged or out of date, and we bring them into our upcycling channels. So upcycling channels is a very broad category for myriad of operations. This could include sending it to educational programs as we have. So we currently work with Phoenix, the RSO, to that educates local high school students how to be their own fashion entrepreneur and turn secondhand clothing into new items by deconstructing and reconstructing. Similarly, we work with the Arts 320 class every semester. We give them a big bundle of clothes so that they can strip it down and turn it into essentially little threads or strips so that they can weave it into new items. And all of this is available on our social media. It's really cool to see their process of doing it. And outside of working with educational places, we also work with independent designers where we give them clothes and we tell them here are items that were destined for the waste stream, but could you turn something else out of it? So we're building a new platform that can showcase these items for these artists. Other ones are bulk shredders and recyclers so that we can turn them into pillow stuffing and anything that's within padding material. Yeah. And that turns into a new item, and then hopefully one day it'll end up back in Karma Trade.
Great. So I do have some questions about this from myself and others. So I really like the emphasis on collaboration between influencers, other burgeoning entrepreneurs, and designers. I think it's so valuable for other businesses and entrepreneurs to kind of understand that it's like you can create this sustainable business model through community collaborations. So when did you decide to start incorporating, for example, the class at the U of I or the group at the U of I as far as recycling some of those unwearables?
Yeah, it became a very visual problem that we had clothes that weren't leaving. So we wanted to have a solution for them, and staying true with our values while still iterating on our product. We removed it from the shop, and then now we have a separate back room where we keep everything. Yeah, so working with independent designers was our idea to start bringing clothing manufacturing back to America and supporting these independent designers, supporting slow fashion and ethical standards. So our pitch to these designers are always that we want to help you, and think of us as your platform.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when you were talking about like the fact that, my sweater right now, I think it was knitted in the 1980s, late 80s, early 90s. This is a thrifted item, but had to wear it tonight. It made me think of, like, for example, Quad Day or other single-use promotional materials that a lot of businesses use to kind of even spread the word about their own thing. So this kind of also challenges businesses, hey, one simple thing you can do to utilize a lot of these sustainable habits is to maybe rethink how you're promoting yourself or rethink what exactly you're taking in. Like, as a public library, we're not necessarily producing anything material unless someone's maybe making a craft or maybe doing anything regarding like a makerspace, so like 3D printing or a silhouette machine. But at the same time, we do like make tote bags, and with curbside, we had to produce bags, or not produce bags, but purchase bags for other people's consumption. And it was actually really great early on because of feedback from our consumers, our patrons. We allowed people then to like, well, I don't want a bag. I don't want to create this additional waste. So I'm also thinking about your customer review you had. It's that support of sustainability within the brand, within the business. So very cool.
Yeah, we definitely do see a shift of eco-conscious consumers that if you see businesses that are very aware of like the things that they're producing, it actually resonates with people a lot more. And speaking on the problem of creating promotional items or selling stuff that has to go through the means of production in terms of fashion, we've been working on sorting our products so that we can approach small brands, people who like to screen print on t-shirts, questionable sustainability, to essentially screen print on our blanks instead of using newly fresh cotton t-shirts. Because we do get a lot of those promotional items in. That's one of the biggest things that we get in, because that's the easiest thing for people to just give away.
Right.
It's these screen printed t-shirts that have little wear in them because they were, maybe like an apartment building brand or something. And so our goal is to screen print over that or apply some process so that we can reuse that shirt.
Oh, very cool. Great. Well, I think that was, yeah, the main question.
Yeah. And I think that is pretty much all that I have. But I think eco-minded business practices are the future. And there's a lot of different approaches to go towards it. And I can take any questions that happen now.
Yeah. So while people kind of type in, and I really want to encourage everyone, I mean, this is like a free Q&A. Let's learn more about Mona and Karma Trade. So how do you envision Karma Trade growing? Or what's your 5-year, 10-year plan?
Sure. So right now we're working very hard on bringing this process, this shared closet, into an e-commerce platform so that people with points can shop online. And then introducing the online swap in very eco-minded ways, because if we have an online swap-in process, that means people don't have to physically come in to bring in their clothes, and that would entail using shipping or other ways of delivering their product to us. And we know that shipping can involve a lot of waste, so our initial idea is to launch it through local drop-offs. So this initiative will probably take a year or two to really fully mature, and as well as a store. Now down the road, we do want to scale this up. Either there's two possibilities. One is scaling the retail store out by working with pre-existing thrift stores and implementing our software, front end and back end, because we have a better closed loop supply chain system for them to operate on that, again, waste is an inefficient use of resource if they didn't have to generate as much waste, and we're able to churn clothing out a lot better, which is what we do. I am excited to see them take this model on. And the other option is to turn this into an e-commerce focused operations, where we would have a warehouse photographing clothes very frequently, and then geolocating the exact location, putting different shipping zones around cities.
Very cool. So here's a question. How has resources outside of the university, like the library, helped you along your journey?
Yeah. I think Urbana-Champaign has a great business community. There's a lot of young people and older people who offer resources to collaborate on. So, well, financially speaking, we were able to get the Urbana grants, and the COVID grants were also really helpful during this time period. And
Can you talk more about those grants? Like, what exactly were they specifically? Like, was it like, I know Urbana, they have business grants, but also like art grants?
Sure. So the Urbana business grant, I could talk a lot about. We started renting our space in CoLab, and then because we signed a lease in Urbana, they want to support us in growing the business. So that we were able to have our first year covered, and we were able to get a business expansion grant as well. So it's been very helpful in the initial bootstrapping phase. Outside of the university.
So in COVID grants, is that just like Which one
Yeah.
specifically?
Yes. So we were able to get sanitation equipment and to make sure the clothes are clean and that we were protected during this pandemic so that we can actually open a retail store during the middle of a crisis.
That's awesome. So how did you find out about the Urbana Business Grants?
Sure. So the SBDC is a great way to learn more and talk about business ideas. So through the SBDC, we talked to Don Elmore, who's a director. He's a super cool person. He runs Jane Addams bookstore in Champaign. We resonated on very similar business models, moving old stuff around.
He is fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I just shared the link to Champaign-Urbana SBDC in the chat. So I encourage you guys to check it out. And to branch off of just talking to Don, they also have a lot of really incredible webinars about starting your business in Illinois and a lot of local resources to use. So
My best advice to starting a business in Champaign-Urbana is to just talk to the other local business owners. People want to help, and it's not, this community, we support each other and we're not, backstabbing. So setting up events, you can ask local businesses, hey, can I set up an event in your space, or can we do this collaborative thing together to maybe help start up my business? A lot of that.
absolutely. So, I mean, was that just like a cold call? Like you had mentioned the Gilbert Gallery. So did you just run upstairs while it was open and just be like, oh, hey?
My best method is always just going in there and saying hello, telling them about my idea. Cold calls are good if you don't have the opportunity to meet them in person, but meeting them in person is always the best way to feel someone's energy and talk
Yeah,
about this.
I completely agree. Okay, so we have another question. How do you get teammates?
That
So
is a hard question.
collaborators.
Yes, teammates are hard to find. The right teammates have to be with the right skill set that perfectly complement yours, and you have to find them in the right time of their life. Because
Could
yes,
could you also expand what do you mean when you say teammate?
yes, me or
Yes, yes, in general. And I think this is also for the person who did ask that question. If we can just determine if it's like, is this co-collaborator? Is this someone who helps you do a specific skill, like an outsourced skill? But what does a teammate mean for you, Mona?
sure. So a teammate, in my sense, is a co-founder,
Okay.
the original founding team.
Yep.
That is the first step to starting, and then we can think about outsourcing and hiring. So the question is, do you need a co-founder? I think that's the first question to ask. I went through and through high school I had co-founders, but then they were in the right time in life. They wanted to pursue college degrees in different locations, so it didn't work out. And then down the road too, being in a university, people were more attracted towards internships and extracurricular activities, and thinking that Karma Trade was simply extracurricular activity. That didn't work out so well, even though they had very well complementary skill sets. So my co-founder is Brandon, could be in here today. Yes, he is.
Hi,
So
Brandon.
we have awesome complementary skills. This opportunity is very data driven. I'm very a people person, so it's great. And we're also both in the same time of our life to be able to take on something and work on a whole new company. And then now, if we're redefining teammates as, say, people that you're hiring or outsourcing, I actually went through a phase where, teammates it's hard to find, to hire the right people, even though you're paying them and it's good for them. But sometimes because of emotional problems and because, your personalities don't jive, that has a fall through. So actually I asked my friend who runs a 3D printing shop, and I asked her, how do you hire? And she said she takes it as a approach as if she's dating. So, you'll never know what your first date is going to be like. Just, when it feels, when their gut feeling says no, you just gotta exit.
Is this Judy Lee?
Yes. Yes.
She's
You know
pretty
what I'm talking
incredible.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. She actually is someone who we should have on to talk with because for those interested, she has like a viral 3D print shop that she went like TikTok famous or something. Very cool. Very cool stuff. Also in Urbana. In the
Yes.
same collab area too, right?
Yeah, that's how we met.
Oh,
Just
great.
working next to each other in the basement. She started with 4 3D printers, and now she has over 100.
That's incredible. That's great. So when did you determine the need to get a co-founder? Was it just you were taking on too many just responsibilities? It was a little overwhelming.
Yeah, so we are a tech startup. That means we have a lot of software development and tech building that happens with that. While I do know how to program and I do have that ability to do it, the problem is that investing a lot of energy in only the product development side, then we would be lacking on the human connection, the fundraising, team building, overall just being a CEO
Yeah.
versus the CTO. That was why we knew that a co-founder relationship was necessary.
Nice. Well, here I'll let the questions keep on coming in. But what is like, where do you want Karma Trade to be at? What would the ideal end game be for you?
Yeah, I want to prove this out as a model for businesses in the future, expand from fashion into any other household items. If you have a coffee mug you don't like, can you swap it for some karma points and maybe put it towards, I don't know, a bike from somebody who didn't want their bike. So I think the circular economy is a very much a real future, and that's why I'm very dedicated to work on it. This is an early MVP for us, so we're very excited to see how everything scales in the backend software. We're learning a lot to be able to aggregate clothing and determine where it goes in our channels, and also create a system that works really well and can hopefully replace fast fashion.
Yeah. And then just to clarify, you had said MVP. Does that stand for most valuable player or something else?
Minimal viable product.
Thank you. All right. Well, let's go back and maybe talk a little bit about how other businesses can adopt more sustainable practices. Do you have any other tips or recommendations to make their services more sustainable that maybe who don't produce any items?
Sure, I would look through any raw material that passes through the system, say maybe even coffee, say a coffee shop. So you
Oh,
are producing coffee grounds. That is a raw material that is constantly being pushed through. Now, can you repurpose those coffee grounds so that it works for you in a finan- in a positive financial sense? So maybe you could turn those coffee grounds into fertilizer and sell that um, as raw material. We've actually seen businesses be able to do that. So if coffee shops could send their waste towards these other businesses and creating a whole system.
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it makes you think about so offices, people who might deal with human services. I mean, they also consume coffee. We have a Keurig upstairs. It's maybe taking that sustainability, and if you're not producing a product, maybe just adding it into your mission, or I mean, you can definitely promote the fact that, hey, we have a Keurig upstairs, but we use only reusable cups, or we buy all of our coffee locally to cut down on the carbon footprint of the travel that it would take to get here. Um, I know that, so I pulled up a couple of stats before we talked today, but it's like 1 in 3 consumers prefer eco-friendly options, and like 79% of people are more likely to spend more money on a service or product that they know is more sustainably made or sourced. So, I mean, the evidence is out there that it's trending, and I hate that word. And I'm sure you dislike it as well because it's like so closely aligned with fast fashion. But sending that message out that your business is practicing sustainable habits or is sustainable is going to increase your overall customer base. So that's
Completely,
pretty, pardon?
completely agree.
Yeah, yeah. And I know, I mean, that's me. I will definitely pay more for an item that I know is ethically sourced and sustainably produced. All right. Well, Mona, I don't think we have any other questions. Is there anything else you want to leave with us today? Besides, we do have some people saying they're really excited to check Karma Trade out, and I couldn't agree more.
That's awesome. Yeah. Before I close out, to elaborate on that point, I think also team building and a positive, environmentally positive workspace also encourages and attracts talent and people who care about these aspects within the place they work. So I think green businesses are the future, especially if we look at new government regulations coming in. It's better to adopt these practices now before you have to change the system in the future. But just thinking about how waste is an inefficient use of resources, that we can all develop a better community.
Absolutely. Well, Mona, how do people learn? How do people get in contact with you if they have further questions, or where do they find Karma Trade?
Sure. So we're on Instagram. I can send everything in the chat. So oh, I guess I don't have access to the chat. So we have Karma Trade, Instagram at karma.trade. And you can also reach out to me personally at mona at karmatrade.shop, which is my email address. So feel free to ask questions or bring ideas. I'm always available to chat. And if you have questions specific to the store, feel free to DM us. We're very responsive, and I definitely recommend a follow because we always post our community events and different educational resources on there.
Well, that's incredible. Well, thank you again for joining us today. And so I'm going to go ahead and close us out with some information about the library again. So, yeah, just to reiterate, if you want to maybe continue the conversation, talk more about sustainable ways to incorporate into your business, feel free to reach out. You can always do a one-on-one longer consultation with me or any other of our very skilled and knowledgeable librarians. If you go to our website, champaign.org/bookalibrarian, you can ask us any questions during our open hours over chat. And again, you can reach that at our website, or you can send an email to us at librarian@champaign.org when it's convenient. Once again, we are open to the public and we welcome everyone back. So a little bit about info about our next event. So this is a business brown bag session. So you might have noticed our times have changed a little bit for business programming at the library. So this is at noon next Thursday. And it's pivoting to success. So I guess we're on an Urbana kick because we will have several business owners from Urbana joining us, and it's going to be a nice Q&A session where they talk about how they pivoted during the pandemic, how their business models have changed, services have changed, and how it's made them stronger as a whole. So I thoroughly encourage everyone to sign up for that online. And lastly, to close, I'm Madeline Wolski, the business librarian here at Champaign Public. Feel free to connect when it's convenient. And a last thank you to Mona once again. This was wonderful time, even with all of the very sad information about fast fashion. I'm so glad I have that knowledge now so I can make a more ethical and sustainable choice. So thank you. All right. And everyone, again, you have a wonderful evening and see you next Thursday.
Everyone, thanks for tuning in.
All right.